My name is Isabella Izzy Moore. I'm 29 years old, and my own mother just told me she'll drag me to court if I don't let her and my half-sister move into my home. I stood frozen in the nursery Ethan and I painted last weekend, yellow walls glowing in the late afternoon sun. The tiny crib sat ready, a stuffed bear tucked in the corner waiting for the child I swore would never feel the kind of abandonment I did. On the phone, Catherine's voice was smooth as glass, sharp as a blade. "You owe us Izzy. After everything, it's the least you can do." Her words snapped me backward years ago to when she shoved my boxes toward the door and said, "Your father will handle you." Now she wanted in. What she didn't know was that the last time she cast me aside, I held on to every scrap of proof. And one of those scraps was about to turn into the one weapon that could end her reign for good. Before I continue, I want you to pause for a second. Tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing the cities and states pop up in the comments. And if you've ever been pushed aside by the very people who were supposed to protect you, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, this story isn't just about pain, it's about survival and the kind of revenge no one ever sees coming. I didn't grow up in a mansion. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment above my dad's auto shop on the south side of Dayton, Ohio. The walls always smelled faintly of gasoline, the kind of tang that clung to your clothes. But to me, it was home. My earliest memories are of lying on a cot in the corner of the shop while Dad worked under the hood of a car, Springsteen humming on a battered radio, his boots tapping to the beat. My mother, Catherine, was never built for that world. She met my dad when she was barely out of high school, bright-eyed, hungry for more. Dad used to tell me she could walk into a room and everyone would stop talking just to watch her cross it. But beauty like hers didn't belong to the smell of oil and fry grease. When I was 6, she met Richard Hale, a slick real estate developer with a tailored suit and teeth too white to be real. That's when my story split in half. One night, I woke up to boxes stacked by the door. Catherine's perfume hung thick in the air, masking the sourness of goodbye. "You'll stay with me, Izzy," she said, her nails clicking against her phone as she scrolled. "Your father, well, he's better off without the responsibility." I remember clutching my stuffed rabbit ears worn thin from years of dragging it everywhere. "What about Dad?" I whispered, her eyes flicked down sharp. "Don't start. Richard can give us what your father never could." She said it like love was a receipt and my dad had come up short. We left that night. Richard's house felt like a museum. Marble floors so shiny I could see my reflection. Furniture wrapped in silence, not warmth. Catherine floated in sparkly dresses, her laughter pitched high like she was auditioning for a part. Richard patted my head now and then, as if checking a box. At first, I thought maybe this was the start of something better, but kids notice things. I noticed how my mom's smile tightened whenever I tracked mud on the white rugs. I noticed how she whispered to Richard when she thought I couldn't hear, "She's too much like Daniel." Always questioning, always watching. One afternoon, I curled up in the corner of the living room, cartoons flickering, when I caught her voice sharp from the kitchen. "She's a problem, Richard. She makes me feel judged, like she's waiting for me to fail." I pressed my face into the couch cushion. Being me was the problem. Every other weekend, Dad would drive across town to pick me up. His apartment was small cluttered, but it smelled like pancakes and WD-40. He'd ruffle my hair, hand me a sketch pad, and say, "Draw something for me, Izzy." You've got the eye. We'd sit in a diner booth with torn vinyl seats, the waitress pouring coffee into his chipped mug, while I devoured pancakes dripping with syrup. He'd hum off-key, make silly faces until I laughed so hard milk came out my nose. "Don't let anybody tell you different," he'd say, tapping my drawings. "You're a star." Those weekends were oxygen. Back at Catherine's, I held my breath. As years passed, her criticisms sharpened. "Can't you sit up straight? Why can't you be more like Claire's daughter? Look at her posture, her grades, her hair. Perfect." I'd bite my lip until I tasted iron. The comparisons weren't about improvement. They were about erasure. She wanted me to disappear into someone else's shadow. Then came the day she slapped me. I was 12, muddy sneakers in the hallway. "Dad wouldn't care about dirt," I muttered under my breath. Her hand flew fast, the sting blooming across my cheek. My ears rang, eyes burning. Don't you ever, she hissed, mention him in this house again. That night in the cramped room she'd assigned me, I stared at the ceiling, promising myself she'd never see me cry. A year later, she got pregnant with Sienna. The glow that skipped me bathed her in light. She stroked her belly, whispering, "Our perfect family," while Richard's grin split his face like he'd won the jackpot. When they decided Sienna needed my room, the larger one with sunlight pooling through bay windows, I was shoved into a closet-sized box with a single window facing the neighbor's brick wall. "It's only fair," Izzy Catherine said, voice-clipped. "You're older. You'll understand." Fair. The word tasted like ash. I packed my books and sketches, stacking them in piles that shrank me smaller and smaller. The walls of my new room closed in like a coffin. Still, when Sienna was born, I wanted to love her. Tiny fingers wrapping mine, a giggle bubbling from her throat. For one moment, I believed maybe she could bridge the gap, but even that was stolen. Catherine caught me leaning over the crib, whispering to Sienna. Her eyes flared. "What did I tell you, you ask first? I just wanted out." She pointed at the door. That night I lay in my narrow bed, realizing the distance between us wasn't just walls. It was a canyon, and I was falling. I didn't know it back then, but being pushed into that smaller room was the first rehearsal for the day they'd push me out entirely. By the time I was 14, the line between Catherine's house and my father's apartment wasn't just about zip codes, it was about survival. At Mom's, every step felt like trespassing. At Dad's, every step felt like belonging. But the older I got, the heavier Catherine's silence became. It wasn't just what she said anymore. It was what she didn't say. She didn't ask about school plays or art projects. She didn't look up when I brought home a sketch I was proud of. She didn't even notice when I chopped my hair to my shoulders one summer, desperate for a change. The only time she looked at me closely was to find flaws. Sienna, meanwhile, became the golden child. Her curls bounced, her laugh rang out like wind chimes, and Catherine would parade her at garden parties like a trophy. Neighbors pinched her cheeks, cooed over her perfect dresses. I stood in the background, wearing hand-me-downs Catherine bought on sale, trying not to fidget. One night, I overheard Catherine bragging to Richard while refilling his wine glass. "Sienna's going to be everything I couldn't. She'll marry up, live up, shine. We just need to make sure Izzy doesn't drag her down. Drag her down." I repeated those words in my head like a curse. The truth is, I wasn't perfect. I talked back sometimes, rolled my eyes, got B's instead of A's. But I wasn't reckless. I wasn't cruel. I just wanted a mother who didn't treat me like a stain on her silk blouse. High school became my battlefield. I learned to disappear, to blend into hallways, to live in the margins of my sketchbook. Teachers noticed my talent, though. Mr. Carter, my math teacher, caught me doodling once and instead of scolding, leaned in. "You see things differently, don't you?" I shrugged, embarrassed. "It's just shapes, patterns." "Keep at it," he said, tapping the page. "The world needs people who notice what others miss." Those small words kept me afloat when Catherine's barbs threatened to sink me. Dad noticed, too. On Friday nights after greasy diner burgers, he'd pull out envelopes of bills, sigh, and still find a way to slide $20 across the table. "For your pencils, kiddo. Don't let anyone tell you art won't get you anywhere." I didn't know then how much he was sacrificing just to keep me supplied with sketch pads and charcoal. The breaking point came junior year. Catherine called me into the kitchen. Her manicure gleamed against the marble countertop. "Izzy, we've decided it's best if you move in with your father full-time. With Sienna's schedule and the space here, it's complicated." My throat tightened. Complicated. "You'll adjust," she said, eyes already flicking back to her phone. "New school, new friends. It's for the best." I wanted to scream, ask how I was the problem when Richard had 6 bedrooms and 3 cars in the driveway. But the look in her eyes made clear this wasn't a discussion. It was a dismissal. That night, I packed my life into cardboard boxes. Richard muttered something about "call if you need anything" without even looking up from his laptop. Catherine didn't hug me goodbye. Sienna, too young to understand, waved from the top of the stairs holding a doll. When Dad opened the door to his apartment, his arms wrapped me up so tight I could barely breathe. "We'll make it work, Izzy, I promise." His place smelled like burnt coffee and motor oil walls lined with records from the 70s. My new room had peeling paint and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. But it was mine. Starting at a new school was brutal. The hallways were a minefield of whispers. "That's the new girl," someone muttered as I passed. I kept my head down, doodling in the margins of notebooks, trying not to drown in the loneliness. But slowly, threads of light came through. A girl named Marissa with wild curls leaned over during English class. "You always drawing show me." Her grin was wide when I reluctantly slid the sketchbook over. "Damn, Izzy! You're like a superhero with a pencil." Beside her, Devin, lanky and sarcastic, chimed in. "Nah, more like Batman," brooding in the corner with her notebook of justice. They became my lifeline. We ate lunch together, shared secrets in hushed voices, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to seen. Around the same time, Mrs. Turner, my art teacher, pulled me aside. "There's a scholarship. Full ride, competitive, but you've got the portfolio for it." Hope flared in my chest, dangerous and fragile. A way out, a way to prove Catherine wrong. I worked late into the nights, fingers smudged with graphite eyes burning under the cheap desk lamp in Dad's apartment. He'd peek in carrying 2 mugs of cocoa. "Don't burn yourself out, kiddo." "I need this," I whispered, flipping to another page. "I know," he said softly, "and you'll get it, because you've got more fight than anyone I know." When the letter came, I tore it open with shaking hands. My heart slammed against my ribs as I read the words, "Congratulations, Isabella Moore, recipient of the full academic scholarship." I screamed, clutching the paper to my chest. Dad whooped, lifting me off the ground like I was still 6 years old. "Told you, Izzy. You're unstoppable." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, a smile aching in my cheeks. I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd finally won. But I didn't know then that even my scholarship, my one escape, wasn't safe from Catherine's shadow. College was supposed to be freedom. When I stepped onto campus with my scholarship letter in hand, the air smelled different, like rain on brick and hot coffee from the student union. I breathed it in like oxygen. This was my chance to be someone other than Catherine's discarded daughter. At first, I threw myself into everything. Studio classes lit me up. I'd stay until midnight, charcoal dust on my fingers, building worlds no one could take away. Professors noticed. "You've got a rare eye," Isabella once said, studying my canvas. Don't waste it. For once, the praise didn't come with a comparison or a sting. But even in that new world, Catherine's shadow stretched long. Tuition was covered by the scholarship, but supplies, housing, meals, they weren't. Dad picked up extra shifts at the shop. His hands cracked and blackened with grease, but he never complained. Every month, he'd slide an envelope into my palm when I came home for a visit. For books, for brushes, for whatever you need. Sometimes, though, I'd catch him wincing at the bills stacked on his counter. Guilt gnawed at me. I promised myself I'd make it worth it. Then came the strange phone call. One Tuesday evening, I returned to my dorm after class and found a voicemail blinking. Catherine's voice, clipped and cold. "Don't embarrass yourself, Izzy. Scholarships like that never last. You'll come crawling back soon enough." I froze, phone pressed against my ear. How did she even know I hadn't told her the details? The thought wormed through my mind. Had she tried to interfere? I pushed it down, focused harder, told myself she couldn't touch me anymore. It was during sophomore year that I met Ethan. He was leaning over a drafting table in the design studio, sleeves rolled, hair falling into his eyes as he sketched lines that looked like they could stand on their own. He noticed me watching and grinned, boyish and unguarded. "You an artist or a spy?" he teased. "Depends," I shot back. "Are you worth spying on?" We laughed, and that was the start. Evenings turned into coffee runs, then study marathons that bled into dawn. He came from a family that ate Sunday dinners together, loud and messy, the kind I used to dream about. When he invited me to join them, I nearly cried over a plate of spaghetti because no one argued, no one belittled. They just listened. Ethan never asked me to be anyone other than myself. When I confessed about my mother, about Sienna, about the slap that still burned in memory, he held my hand and said, "Then we build something different. Our family, our rules." By graduation, we were inseparable. I landed a junior designer role at a small firm in Columbus, thrilled just to be creating. Ethan got into an architecture firm downtown. We rented a shoebox apartment with creaky floors and too many plants, and for the first time in years, I felt stable. Then Catherine called. Out of nowhere. Her voice slid through the line like poison. "Your sister's starting college in Columbus. She'll need a place to stay. You'll take her in." It wasn't a question. My stomach twisted, but against my better judgment, I said yes. Part of me thought maybe Sienna had grown up. Maybe we could bridge what our mother broke. The first night Sienna arrived, she tossed her suitcase onto the floor and scanned the place like a hotel critic. "It's cozy," she said, lips curling. "You have almond milk, right? I can't do regular dairy." I forced a smile, stocked the fridge with kale, told myself it was temporary. But soon, she was stumbling in at dawn heels, clicking against hardwood perfume, clinging to the air like smoke. Ethan and I lay awake while her laughter echoed down the hall, and then I caught it the way she looked at Ethan. Lingering glances hair flips a laugh just a little too sweet when he walked into the room. One night after she disappeared into her room, Ethan sat on the couch, jaw tight. "Izzy, she's crossing lines. She's been..." Flirty. Heat surged in my chest. "Thank you for telling me." The next morning I confronted her. "Sienna, he's my fiancé. Respect that." She smirked, leaning in the doorway. "Relax. I'm just being nice. Can I help it if he notices me?" Her words sliced deeper than she knew, echoing Catherine's voice, Catherine's dismissals. That was the moment I realized Sienna wasn't just my half-sister. She was my mother, reborn 20 years younger. I told her she needed to move out. She rolled her eyes, grabbed her phone, and within an hour, Catherine called me, voice like a whip. "You're jealous. You can't stand Sienna being happy." My hand shook around the phone. "I just want respect, Mom. That's it." But she'd already hung up. For months, silence stretched. I buried myself in work and Ethan, in building a life that was mine. But the ache never left the ache of being painted as the villain in a story I never wrote. And then news broke Sienna's wedding. A glittering event photographs splashed across social media, her smile perfect, her gown dripping with diamonds. Everyone whispered about how she'd married up. I called Catherine, trying to bridge the gap. "Congratulations." I just wanted to say. Her reply was ice. "Don't bother, Izzy. This isn't for people like you. Stay away." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, hands trembling, and for the first time in years, I laughed bitter broken, because I finally understood no matter what I did, no matter what I achieved, I would never be enough for her. But what Catherine didn't know was that the cracks she left in me were filling with something stronger. And the day would come when she'd regret underestimating me. Life after Sienna's wedding should have been calm. Ethan and I were planning ours, talking color palettes and playlists over late-night takeout. Dad was thrilled, already practicing his speech. For the first time, I thought maybe I'd carved out something safe. Then Catherine reappeared. It started with a voicemail. Her tone was clipped, the kind she used when giving directions to waiters. "Isabella, your sister is going through a difficult time. You should reach out. Be supportive. After all, she is family." I deleted the message. My thumb hovered over the trash icon longer than it needed to heart racing. Family. She said it like it was a debt I owed, not a bond. 2 days later, another call. "Don't ignore me, Izzy. You've always had a selfish streak. This is your chance to make it right." I set the phone down, chest tight. Ethan squeezed my hand. "You don't owe them anything." But Catherine had a way of burrowing under my skin. I didn't sleep that night, replaying her words, the echo of selfish streak ringing like a gavel. Our own wedding was simple, a community hall, strung with fairy lights, wildflowers in mason jars, the smell of barbecue drifting from the kitchen. Dad walked me down the aisle, his hands trembling but steady. Ethan's eyes never left mine. When the officiant said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," cheers filled the room. Laughter music, the clinking of glasses. It was everything Catherine's parties never were real. But when I called Catherine one last time before the big day, she cut me down. "A backyard party for nobodies," she scoffed. "Don't embarrass yourself by inviting me." I swallowed the sting, smiled at Ethan when he asked how the call went. She's busy, I lied. Inside, I knew the truth: she'd never step into a room where I might outshine her. Months later, I scrolled through photos of Sienna's life designer clothes, rooftop parties, captions dripping with envy bait. She had married money just as Catherine planned. Then the news hit. Her husband had thrown her out. Cheating scandal, lawsuit. Suddenly the pictures stopped. Her perfect life crumbled overnight. That's when Catherine called again. No greetings, no warmth, just orders. Richard's business has gone under. Sienna's been humiliated. We need a place to regroup. Your place will do. I froze in the doorway of our nursery. No, I said, voice steadier than I felt. This is our home. You owe us Isabella, she snapped. After everything we've done for you. I laughed bitterly. Everything you've done? You mean throwing me out when I was 16, replacing me with your perfect family? Her silence was sharp enough to cut. Then you'll regret this. When I hung up, Ethan was watching from the hallway. Izzy, they want to move in, I said, voice shaking. And I said no. For the first time, I felt the storm wasn't just circling. I was standing in the middle of it. I thought saying no would end it. It didn't. It just taught Catherine where the edges of my boundary were so she could start sawing at them. It began with a knock after midnight. Rain stuttered against the front step streetlight, cutting a pale stripe across our entryway. When I opened the door, Sienna stood there in a sequined dress that looked like it had lost the party and kept the price tag. Mascara bruised the skin beneath her eyes. The heel of one shoe hung by a thread. Behind her, a rideshare idled brake lights, pulsing red like a heartbeat. Don't send me away, she whispered. No hello, no apology. Her suitcase sat at her ankles like a dog that knew it wasn't welcome. I stepped back. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and the faint latex of drying paint from the nursery. Ethan hovered in the hallway t-shirt and flannel pants hair, sleep mussed eyes alert. One night, I said, keeping my voice even, couch only. We talk in the morning. She nodded too quickly, like agreeing was a trick she'd learned to buy time. Inside, she trailed her fingers over our framed photos, me and Ethan on a hiking trail. Dad laughing behind a grill, a snapshot of the ultrasound pinned with washi tape on the hallway board. She paused at the nursery door. The mobile spun slowly from the AC paper cranes, casting soft, broken shadows. It's cute, she said. The word sat wrong in her mouth. Cute like a hair clip, like a toy. I closed the door. Blankets are in the basket, bathrooms down the hall. At 2 a.m, I woke to the blue glow of a phone. Sienna on the couch whispering, "Yeah, I'm here. Of course she will." A beat. "No, I won't ask. She'll offer." She glanced up. Our eyes met. The whisper cut off with a soft click. In the morning, the couch was made. Sienna was gone. On the hall table, she'd left a glossy smear of lipstick on a mug and a note on my monogrammed stationery. "Thanks, big sis. You're a lifesaver. Heart S." That afternoon, Catherine called. "So generous of you to open your home," she purred. "We'll bring the rest of her things tomorrow." "You will not," I said. Last night was compassion, not consent. Silence. Then a step closer to her true voice. "Don't be petty." I looked at the nursery door, hand on the knob, palm damp. "I'm being precise." 2 days later, the building manager buzzed. "We've got a furniture delivery for the guest suite. Name on the order is Catherine Hale. Billing address is..." Well, it bounced. "They want to leave it here." "We don't have a guest suite," I said, heat crawling up my neck. "They have your address. They say you'll accept." I went downstairs and stared at a truck full of cream-colored furniture that looked allergic to children. The delivery guy shrugged, scanning his tablet. Lady said her daughter's hosting her for a while. Said to talk to Izzy. My name in Catherine's mouth, handed to strangers. I made them take it away. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed unknown number. Then, a text. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Be a team player for once." That night, we found the latch on our side gate, jimmied mud on the deck, a faint perfume ghosting the air. Ethan checked the doors twice, then a third time. "She has to stop," he said. His voice had that calm he used on clients when a beam reading was off by a fraction. calm because rage wouldn't help. We can change the locks tomorrow. I nodded, but my stomach wouldn't unclench. I lay awake, counting the seconds between wind gusts, thinking of all the nights I'd counted seconds in Catherine's house for other reasons. A week later, a letter arrived from the university alumni office, thick paper, my full name in calligraphy, inside a printed program draft for their annual donor gala. My eyes snagged on a paragraph. We are honored to showcase a decade of our scholarship recipients' success stories, including the courageous decision by freshman recipient Isabella Moore to decline her full award due to family priorities. Her letter of gratitude and declination will be displayed. My throat closed. I sat down on the stairs, paper trembling. Decline gratitude. I had never written that letter. I had framed the scholarship notice above my dorm desk until the tape peeled. I grabbed my phone and called the number at the bottom. A cheerful coordinator answered. "Oh, Isabella, we're thrilled you got our packet. There's a mistake," I said. I never declined anything. A pause. Keys clicked. "We have a scanned letter on file signed by you. It's dated July 15th, your freshman summer. It says you needed to focus on helping family, and that you were grateful for the semester you received. July 15th. The date hit like a hallway you know too well. That summer, I'd moved into Dad's place full-time. Catherine had kept my mail for convenience. I remembered picking up a thin stack of envelopes she handed over with 2 fingers like they smelled bad. Had one gone missing before she passed them on? "Could you send me a copy?" I asked, voice scraping. "I need to see the signature." "Of course, we can email it." A beat. "You sound upset. Are you okay?" I stared at the nursery wall across from me, our paper cranes, our lemon paint. "I will be." When I opened the scan, my stomach turned. The signature was my name in someone else's hand, familiar and wrong. The text was too formal, full of phrases no 18-year-old me would have used. At the bottom, respectfully, Isabella Moore. The word respectfully made my skin crawl. I called Mrs. Turner. She answered on the second ring, voice warm and surprised. "Izzy, my star. I was just thinking of you. Your senior show was all over the alumni newsletter." "I need to ask you something," I said, skipping hello cheery. "Did anyone ever reach out to you about my scholarship?" Back then, silence then, the smallest intake of breath. "This isn't a phone conversation," she said quietly. "Can you come by the school this week? I'm there late on Thursdays. Bring whatever they sent you." My pulse kicked. Is everything okay? Another breath. "Come, dear." After we hung up, I sat with it, the tilt in her tone, the way older women talk when the truth will bruise. I didn't know specifics yet, but I felt the shape of it. I felt Catherine's fingerprints on a letter that had rearranged the path beneath my feet. I scrolled back through old contacts and found a number I hadn't touched in years, the landline at Catherine's house. A recorded greeting still chirped with Richard's old smile. "You've reached the Hales, leave it short. We're busy living." I almost left a message I found your forgery. Instead, I pressed end. Not yet. Keep the powder dry. Sienna texted that evening. A photo of a bruise-colored sky. Then, "Are you mad at me?" I typed, deleted, typed again. She followed up before I could send. "I'm scared." "Izzy, he's suing. Mom says you'll help." "Please." I stared at the word please. It's a soft word, even when it belongs to someone who has used softness as a blade. Ethan read over my shoulder. "Do you trust her?" he asked. "No," I said. But I remember being her age and needing someone to show up anyway. We met Sienna at a coffee shop 2 neighborhoods over. The windows fogged with steam, the barista's tamp thunking a steady heartbeat. Sienna wore oversized sunglasses inside. When she took them off, her eyes were red-rimmed mascara clotted in the corners. For a second, just one, I saw a kid who'd never been told no until the world shouted it. "I messed up," she said, twisting a napkin. "He found messages. It wasn't what he thinks, but it looks bad." She swallowed. "He says he'll ruin me." "Mom says you won't let that happen." "Mom says a lot of things," I said. Sienna flinched. "Are you going to help me or not?" "What does help look like?" Ethan asked, voice level. "Let me crash for a while," Sienna said. "Just until things calm down." And she hesitated. And maybe lend me some money, just to get a lawyer started. There it was, the ask with interest. I can give you a couple nights, I said, but no money. And ground rules, no guests, no late nights, no comments about my fiancé. Respect my house. She rolled her eyes at the last one, then looked down, chastened. Fine. She lasted 48 hours. On the second night, a man's laugh floated down the hallway at 1 a.m. I got up heart-thudding. A shadow slid behind the half-closed bathroom door. I flipped on the light. Sienna leaned against the counter with a shirtless guy I'd never seen. Out! I said, voice cold enough to crack. I pointed to the front door. Now, relax, Sienna said, smirking. We were just talking. Great. You can talk outside. The guy pulled his shirt over his head, hands up in mock surrender. Hey, I'm not trying to start trouble. Too late. After I shut the door behind them, Sienna hissed, You're pathetic. No wonder Mom finishes that sentence and you're done, I said. Pack your things in the morning. She didn't wait. She left that night a slam of the door, a car peeling out. An hour later, my phone rang. Catherine. No preamble. You are vindictive, Isabella. You always were. If you don't want to be part of this family, then we'll do it the hard way. The hard way, I said, already knowing. My hand was steady. My heart wasn't. I'm filing for emergency relief. I'll argue you're hoarding marital assets the family helped you obtain his funds, my connections. Her voice softened in a way that wasn't soft. Courts love mothers and daughters sticking together. You'll lose. My house is mine, I said. My life is mine. We'll see, she purred. See you in court. The line clicked dead. In the silence of our kitchen, the refrigerator hummed, and the paper cranes in the hallway turned and turned and turned. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, eyes on me. I should have shaken. I didn't. Something quiet slid into place, as clean as a knife going home to its sheath. Okay, I said. If she wants the hard way, we'll give it to her. Do we have enough? Ethan asked. I thought of the alumni letter on our stairs of Mrs. Turner's voice saying, Come dear of the shoebox under my bed that held the last decade of Catherine's messages. Some heard, some saved, some left unplayed because I'd been too afraid. Of Dad's file cabinet with manila folders labeled in his blocky hand, Custody Support Caroline. He still slipped and used her name from before she remarried. I thought of the night she pushed my boxes across the marble and said, Your father will handle you. More than enough, I said. He nodded. Then let's make a list. We did names, dates, documents, calls. And as the ink bled into the paper, the dread that had followed me since childhood bled out with it, replaced by something sharper. Not rage, not even revenge. It felt like accuracy. The courthouse smelled like paper and bleach. My palms sweated against the file folder I carried, the edges soft from being flipped through so many times the night before. Ethan walked beside me, his shoulder steady against mine, while Dad trailed a step behind. Jaw clenched the way it always was when Catherine's name came up. I had imagined this day for years, facing her no escape, no excuses, but my imagination never captured the fluorescent hum, the squeak of shoes on polished linoleum, the way my stomach twisted at the sight of her. Catherine swept in like she was entering a gala heels, clicking a silk scarf knotted at her throat. Sienna followed a step behind, arms crossed, lips pursed in a performance of wounded innocence. Richard Hale wasn't there. Rumor had it he'd retreated to Florida after his business collapsed. It was just Catherine still dressed in the armor of her vanity, pretending the empire hadn't already burned around her. Her eyes found me across the lobby. She smiled, cold, precise. Isabella. I gripped the folder tighter. Catherine. Mom. She corrected softly, just loud enough for Sienna to hear. It was bait. I didn't bite. We filed into the courtroom. The air was heavy, thick with murmurs. The judge, a woman with silver hair pulled into a bun, raised a brow as Catherine's lawyer rattled off their petition. Our clients, Mrs. Hale and her dependent daughter, have been unfairly denied access to the family home despite substantial contributions, both financial and emotional. Financial? I wanted to laugh. Emotional, I wanted to scream. The judge's eyes shifted to me. Ms. Moore. I rose, heart pounding. Your Honor. The house in question is solely mine, purchased under my name, paid with my earnings. My mother relinquished custody when I was 16. I have the documentation. I slid the first sheet across the table, Dad's careful record-keeping notarized and sealed. The lawyer barely flinched. That was years ago. Families reconcile. Our position is that Ms. Moore has an obligation. Obligation. The word tore out of me sharper than planned. My voice carried in the stillness. She abandoned me. She forged my signature to cancel my scholarship. A ripple spread across the courtroom. Catherine's head snapped toward me, eyes narrowing. That's a lie. I lifted the alumni letter, the scan of the forged note, and placed them gently before the judge. My hands shook, but my voice didn't. This was submitted under my name. I never wrote it. My teacher, Mrs. Turner, can testify that Catherine approached her that summer, pressuring her to draft something professional for the scholarship board. She refused, but the letter still appeared, and I lost benefits I had earned. The judge's gaze slid to Catherine. Is this true? Catherine's lips twitched. She's mistaken. I was only guiding. From the back row, a voice cut through. No, she isn't. Every head turned. Mrs. Turner stood there, small in stature but unshakable, her glasses reflecting the fluorescent lights. She carried a folder of her own edges crisp. I told Catherine at the time I wouldn't be complicit, but when I saw the forged letter years later in alumni records, I kept a copy. I couldn't stomach what she'd done to her own child. The judge accepted the folder. Papers rustled. My chest ached with relief and rage all at once. Catherine's mask slipped then for just a second. Her smile wavered, teeth clenched. She leaned forward, whispering across the table, venom dripping. Ungrateful brat. I didn't flinch. Truth isn't ingratitude. The judge tapped her pen against the desk. Mrs. Hale, not only is there no basis for your claim to Ms. Moore's property, but there is evidence of fraudulent behavior that harmed her education. I strongly suggest you withdraw this petition before consequences escalate. Silence pressed down like weight. Sienna shifted in her seat, eyes darting between us. Catherine's nails clicked against the table, the only sound. Finally, she stood smoothing her scarf. Fine. We withdraw. Her lawyer's mouth opened, then shut. The gavel fell sharp as a gunshot. It was over, at least on paper. But Catherine didn't walk out defeated. She walked out dangerous. In the hallway, reporters hovered, sensing blood. Catherine paused, tilting her chin toward me. Her voice was low, meant only for me, though every word burned into memory. This isn't over, Isabella. You may have won today, but daughters don't erase mothers. You'll see. Then she swept past Sienna, trailing her heels echoing like cracks in marble. I stood, frozen folder clutched to my chest, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing in my skull. Dad laid a hand on my shoulder. Ethan's fingers found mine, and for the first time in years, I smiled, not soft, not bitter, cold, precise, because Catherine was right about one thing. It wasn't over. It had only just begun. The courthouse steps felt different on the way out. The air was sharp with early spring, a chill wind tugging at the corners of my coat. I should have felt relief, maybe even triumph, but what settled in my chest was quieter, heavier, like the silence after a slammed door. Dad clapped me gently on the back. Proud of you, Izzy. You stood tall. His voice cracked around the edges the way it always did when the past pressed too close. Ethan leaned in his hand, warm around mine. She can't touch you anymore, he said, not with the truth on record. But I didn't answer. Because I knew Catherine. I knew the way she played long games, the way she wore masks until they molded to her skin. She wouldn't lick her wounds and disappear. She'd retreat, rearm, and wait for the next moment I blinked. That night, after Dad went home and Ethan drifted into sleep, I sat alone in the nursery. The paper cranes swayed above me, casting restless shadows. I pulled down the shoebox I kept hidden at the back of the closet. Inside were fragments of my history, old photos, voicemails burned to CDs, scraps of handwriting, proof, weapons. I picked up one cassette tape, its label scrawled in my teenage hand, voicemail July 15th. My heart jolted. That date, the same summer Catherine declined my scholarship. I slid it into an old recorder. Her voice crackled through the static. Richard, the school keeps calling. I told them Izzy doesn't need the money. What kind of girl admits she can't afford things? I'll handle it. She'll thank me one day. My stomach clenched, but then something strange happened. I smiled. Not soft, not bitter sharp, because in my hands I wasn't holding trauma anymore. I was holding leverage. I whispered into the quiet, testing the shape of the words. You thought you destroyed me. All you did was hand me the one weapon I needed. From the other room, Ethan stirred, calling my name. I tucked the tape back into the box and slid it beneath the crib. Someday Catherine would circle back, convinced she could still own me, and when she did, I'd be ready. For now, I looked around the nursery, our nursery. Yellow walls, glowing tiny clothes folded in drawers, the future breathing quietly around me. Catherine might come again, claws sharper, lies tighter. But the difference was clear. This time, I wasn't the scared girl shoved into a smaller room. I was the woman who knew exactly what she had saved and exactly how to use it, and when she came back, the fight wouldn't just be survival, it would be mine. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, I know what that weight feels like. But I also know you can build something stronger even out of broken pieces. My story isn't finished because people like Catherine never truly walk away, and when she comes back, I'll be ready. If you want to see how this unfolds, hit subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. This story isn't over, far from it.